Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of TheoryForge Fridays. Episode 38 here, multi-genre game hybrids. Pretty cool stuff going on, and we have some awesome folks here. Just gonna go around real quick, have everyone introduce themselves, going clockwise. Skyla, let's start with you.
I'm Skylatron. I I was gonna say I'm a video game industry veteran, but that sounds dumb. And apparently I have a cupcake by my name, so that's sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, check that out.
Alright. Diggs, you're up next.
Hey, I'm Diggs. You'll find me in Landmark forums and Revival forums and on TheoryForge and Revival casts.
Alright. David.
I'm Dave, and I do communication for Fairy Tale Distillery, making Dust Out.
Awesome. Which is a great name for a company, by the way. And Alex.
Yep. Yeah, you heard it. My name is Alex. I'm the game designer and game director of Dust Hall. That's what I'm here for today.
Awesome. And of course, everybody, you know who I am, so I will not give any introduction. I'm the man who needs no introduction. So, we got a lot of stuff to get into. Before we ask the first question, what I really wanted to know is, where did the project start? How did it get started? What spawned the idea of making this type of game in this type of way?
Well, I guess it all comes out of playing that kind of game. So I started with Ultima Online about in, 99 or so, 98. And then got into Shadowbane a couple years later and really, really, really enjoyed that. And I was kind of sad when it ended and wanted to make my own MMO, because that's always a dream, right? You always want to make your own, make it better, and make the thing that's really going to work and make everybody happy. And yeah, I had concepts in my head for that for years. I decided to actually get into games, start a game studio, figure out how making games works. Took me about 4 years to become basic game design literate, and this what we're doing right now on the style is about 2.5 years of full-time work in. So concepts are about 6 to 7 years old, but 2.5 is what we spent actually working on it, concentrated full-time.
Wow. This is definitely a long time to be working on it. It definitely shows with the, how it plays already in the demos and stuff. For anybody who doesn't know, there have been actually some little gameplay demo sessions, selected users, if I'm not mistaken, and I've gotten a chance to play with these guys a couple times. I usually roll with them on the servers because they got some other big groups involved, and they kind of take things over. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, we figured out early on that we need to, actually early on, pretty late, that we need to set up a clan kind of for all the solo players, random players coming in, because the big experienced clans are just going to roll over you. So we're taking everybody to come with us, and that's actually a really fun experience now.
It is. And the other thing is we get to just give you guys feedback directly, which is always lovely.
Yep. Which is why we run these tests, right?
Yeah, it's cool stuff. All right, so getting to the first question we have here, and this is something that we talk about a lot on this show. We've probably spent at least a quarter of our time on this show just debating what do you guys think an MMO is? How do you define that, and how do you define role playing?
MMORPG.
MMORPG.
Not just MMORPG.
MMORPG, yes.
Oh man. So that's a really tough question, because on the one hand, as a game designer, you're really into defining stuff. This is a game. This is not a game. These are the things that a game have. On the other hand, some stuff is subjective. For me, an MMORPG is kind of a game in which I have a couple hundred of people in the same game world doing things in real time. That's the MMO part. The RPG part, for me, normally translates into I have something that is very character focused, very progression focused, something where I can build up a character for myself. I think that's my main motivation, my main definition. If I look at role playing as a term, I tend to decouple that from RPG, interestingly. Though I do know that like it is supposed to be in there, right? But for me, role playing really means playing a role, and I've done extensive like role playing back on like Ultima Online free shards, where I played like I don't know a mute craftsman, which is interesting. We can only emote. But yeah, the RPG for me means character development, and MMO means a couple hundred people in the same game world at the same time. Done.
Very cool.
I would say the same thing. MMO basically always just meant scale to me, like a large amount of people being able to interact in the same environment, and the RPG basically just a lot of connection with the player's character's actual progression, like being able to level up certain things and actually change your character. And role playing, I don't know. Yeah, I always kind of disconnected that as well, and it's kind of a different experience. You don't need to go out into the world necessarily to role play. I typically found people doing that in like the cities most of the time.
What is the definition that you guys have agreed on in these? Like, I don't know, dozen episodes that we've done.
Well, that's kind of why we spend so much time on it, because it's, you know, it's such a really
No
difficult
agreement.
thing to define. Like, I would say there's arena shooters, I believe, that have a maximum capacity of 256 people that exist these days. So does that make it an MMO, or does it have to be more of the scale of PlanetSide 1 or 2 to really be an MMO?
It's a really good question. Oh, actually, we forgot one criteria, which is persistence, right? A lot of people would say an MMO needs to be persistent. And then I'm like, so my game worlds run for like a couple months and then they're gone. So is it now an MMO? Is this persistent? Isn't it?
It's an MMO, but it's not an RPG.
All right.
That's the key. So
all right.
Your RPG is the part that has to be persistent. Your character has to be growing over time in a persistent world, and it needs to be following some form of hero's journey, so that you're ramping up your experience and skills. So I like how you guys defined it on your Kickstarter video as a open world battle arena. It's very much that, but I don't think it's an RPG.
That's kind of the result of like discussions we've had, like very similar to this on the forums. Because it's kind of tricky, because our characters do that. They do develop over like a period of the 2 months. Like people level up, they get new skills, they go new places, but then at the end, the character obviously ends. So
yeah,
it's kind of hard to say.
It's a little bit of a weird thing. Like if you take like an MMORPG, say Age of Conan, and you run the game for 2 months and then you cancel it, did it stop being an MMO?
It doesn't stop being an MMO, but it's not
an MMORPG.
But it's not what RPG fans want. That's the point. If you're trying to recreate what we were doing in Dungeons and Dragons, you don't play Dungeons and Dragons so that your campaign can, last for 2 months and then, or even a year, and then bloop, you redo it again. It's a very different experience, I think, of what you want coming in. So if it's a battle arena, then you can just reset, because you're not invested in the character development that deeply. It's more about the battle.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that there's like different motivations for people playing MMORPGs. One of them is more my motivation of like playing a game with a lot of people, but for me it's still very much game focused. For other people it's more focused on being in a world, experiencing that world and living in that world. And that is something that we do not focus on as much as others do, right? The whole like, I want one big world with all the people and it's going to run forever, it's going to change over time. That thing I do sacrifice to a degree as a designer to make other features stand out more. For example, the like more structured team combat and that kind of stuff. So yeah, agreed.
Gotcha.
And actually, when I was looking at the videos this morning on Kickstarter, it looks more like an RTS. So, Crowfall, and I think you guys are kind of very close siblings to Crowfall, both coming from Shadowbane. They talk about how they want it's a kind of real-time strategy as they're going through. And that's what it actually looked like to me. Action combat, lots of people running around, trying to control an area. That was kind of interesting. It's like I don't even know how to describe it exactly, because it's individual people instead of coordinating one person coordinating masses of people. But that's what it reminded me of.
I think you can also see it in the camera work. If you remember Shadowbane, then most of us played it like very far zoomed out. You could have played it like very zoomed in, third person over the shoulder, but nobody ever did it because you wanted the big overview. So for me, making our game top down was just like pretty literal translation from that. But other people would totally be like, to me, this doesn't feel like an MMORPG, because an MMO, I want to be like the character. I want to be like really in the world. I want to look around. So yeah, we definitely have something that comes from that like RTS strategy perspective.
Yeah. Actually, that kind of reminded me of when I played well over a decade ago, Savage: The Battle for New Earth, which is basically there were peons that you had one person basically being like the Warcraft general on each side, and then all the fighters are player characters. They'd earn gold on their own. You could level up and advance in different ways, and you could even request money from the general to get your upgrades or get a weapon at a specific time to do something really tactical. So it had, I'm sure the Fog of War view. I never actually played the general view. I'm sure it had like Fog of War and different controls and really good overview. You could assign sergeants, you could assign commands to people and stuff. So pretty cool sort of thing. And I could see how like that game that was a long time ago. Probably had a lot of influence on a lot of the games going forward. Definitely a really, really cool sort of multi-genre hybrid sort of thing, a really cool mix, and I really liked it when I did play it. I think that was like early DSL days even at that point. So I want to actually roll into the next question here, kind of plays off of what we were just talking about. What is Dostal in terms of genre and scope and focus?
So yeah, genre is a hard question. We talked about that, right? So we call it an open world battle arena right now because we do not want too much of this is not an MMORPG backlash, even though it is what we started out with. On the other hand, it's really hard to always say, so this is kind of an MMO, and it's also kind of like a combat thingy, and like, so we just picked our own genre and see like maybe it's going to stick, maybe it's going to be like, I don't know. I think Riot Games made MOBA into a genre name. Maybe we can go with that. Let's see. So in terms of scope and focus, it is an online role-playing game. No, it's an online RPG that is very much focused on player interaction, mostly combat between players, but also diplomacy, trade. The scope is that we want about 2,000 people to be registered per server, and we expect to have about 10% of those online at the same time, at prime time, which is what you normally see, I would say, in MMO numbers. So about 200 of them in the same world, and those people are basically trying to figure out how to deal with each other. The background story is that you are one of a couple thousand prisoners who land in this dark fantasy prison valley that once was a really nice, beautiful valley, but nowadays is kind of like destroyed, post-apocalyptic, a little bit toxic. Well, you land in there, and I only have, say, 2 months to get out of here, because then either the sickness will have gotten us, or, I don't know, bad things happen.
Right.
That's about like the scope of what we're doing. And I think Dave can go a little bit more into detail on like what players are actually doing in there, how they work together.
Story-wise, yeah. If we do want to delve into the story,
Yeah, go for it. Up to you
oh,
guys.
well, that's the basics of it. Like, essentially, the world that it's set in, which is not an existent world, obviously. People were kind of nomads living at the base of mountains and in the deserts and that sort of thing. And they found this valley that was rich in resources, and basically a gold rush sort of happened where all these people who were living off like nothing, like there's a bunch of stuff in this valley, and a city formed on the edge of it. And a kind of catastrophe happened where all the workers started getting sick, and so everyone started to pull out of the valley. And then a dictator sort of rose and took advantage of the situation to take power, and then threw anyone who disagreed with her into the valley, and that's how everyone ends up there. And then you've got like the workers who were kind of sickened, who are enemies down there, like the mobs.
Okay, I gotcha.
So I have a question, a follow-up question. You guys pointed us to a thread in your forums about gender and how you're. I don't even know how to describe it because I guess it technically exists, but you can't really see too much of an impact of the gender. And I'm wondering how cultures are represented in Das Tal 2. Is there a racial or cultural difference going in there?
Huh. So what's not going to happen is that you start up the game and then you go to the character creation screen and you pick like race A, race B, race C, and race A has like this nice +5 to strength and race B has like +5 to dexterity. It's not a thing. We are going to give you eventually, since that is not in yet, the ability to like customize your character's visual, so you can go for like skin color, hair color, whatever, and then you can pretend that this is like you part of being of that world. In the
So
end,
you
if
can role play?
you can role play, yes. Even in our game, you can role play. If I look at what if I take like real world cultures as inspiration for the game, then what I decided very early on is I want to go very far away from the usual like medieval Europe, Arthurian legends kind of bricks and mortars castle kind of thing, and like steal from other cultures. Most inspiration came from like I would say like more Bedouin kind of Arab kind of style than from a more feudal Japan kind of settled down tribe kind of style, and then from mostly Mongolian the Mongols, as in the trope, the Mongols, right? We haven't done a lot of like research into actual history. We're more like inspired by like what we see in pop culture, and so we kind of like took those three cultures and like kind of like fused them together in what we see as the basis of our world. So there's some people who are more like coming from the steppes, more like connected to horses, more living in yurts. Some are more like coming from the deserts, living close to like the couple oases that are there. And there is the third kind of culture that is more like feudal Japan, agriculture, more structured. And all of those kind of come together in this melting pot of the valley, right? This is the place where they all came together. They first formed not a homogeneous group, but at least a group of people who had like kind of similar goals. And then their whole society kind of turned very, very, a dictatorship formed. A lot of those people from different backgrounds got thrown into the valley, and you are one of them. And now figure out who you want to be, who you want to represent. Go for it.
Do you think people will form up more based on, I don't know how to say it. I want to say kind of like the relationships they've already built outside of the game versus, I want to again role play this culture in this group. It feels to me like it's more just going to be, we like playing together, so we're going to form these clans. I think is what
it's both going to happen. It's both going to happen very much. Like on the one hand, you will have people for whom this will be like the first MMO, the first game that they play with other people, and they will probably base their characters and their clans on our lore, on what we have in the world. On the other hand, there will be clans who have like, or guilds who have played together for like 20 years, 25 years, and they will maybe adopt what we give them, or they will completely ignore it. So in Shadowbane, I think the the orcs who came from Ultima Online kind of adopted their Iroquois dark elf setting and like kind of interpreted that as their new thing. And other people totally ignored it and they're just like, whatever, either we don't roleplay or we're still the shipwreck pirates. The shipwreck pirates still exist up to these days, right? And they weren't that much fitting into the Shadowbane lore. So I guess both things are going to happen, and I'm totally fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So moving right along here. What have been some of the successes and challenges to design a game that blurs the lines of multiple genres?
I think the biggest one is probably challenging like people's perceptions of what they want their game to be, because we're kind of trying to get people who like MOBAs to come in. We're trying to get people who like sandbox MMOs to come in, and even people from theme parks. We're trying to show them like, hey, this is how cool an MMO can be. You don't have to be running around doing quests and grinding all the time. But when you invite all of those people in, they kind of have that perception of what their game should be, and so they're like, all right, it's got that thing that I like, but it doesn't have all this other stuff. And so a lot of people are none of it, but then they kind of trying to talk to us and get it, like trying to get us to make it like the game that they're already playing, which is like the opposite of what we're trying to do. Particularly like when we're talking about classifying the game, a lot of people are saying, but it's not an RPG because it doesn't have this. You have to have that in it first. And I guess the success is kind of the opposite of that. Like we are kind of showing people that we can play around with those things and add things in, and in particular take things out like grinding. I would say those.
Okay,
Well,
define grind for me real quick.
Define grind: repetitive, boring tasks that are just not interesting gameplay.
But like, it's not only that. That's no. But a lot of people like doing that sort of stuff. A lot of people like going out and doing like mindless stuff. The point is like grind is pointless. Like its only purpose is to actually inhibit the player from progressing. Like
grind normally is a thing that gets forced on you by the developer and is not normally something that you do on your own. Because I personally, in my free time, sometimes play, say, Candy Crush. And Candy Crush, to me, is a repetitive, mindless, boring task that doesn't require a lot of me. I play it because it empties my mind, right? I just do these things. The same thing is when I like kill 1,000 mobs in an MMO. If I do that on my own, it doesn't feel like grind. If I have to do that to reach the point of where I want to be in the game, because I think that's the fun point, then it is grind. If I need to be level, 60 to compete in PvP, which is what I want to do, and I'm forced to kill 60,000 monsters to get there, that is grind, and that's what I don't like.
Okay, so grind as a gating mechanic is definitely something that you don't like, but what about kind of the other side of things? If it's one of those where it's just a matter of preparation, that you and your buddies can beat the boss with 10 of these potions, and it'll be a little bit dicey, but you can do it. But instead you decide to go out and farm for 50 of the potions per person. So you've got like 500 of these damn things, and it's like, it took all day to do it, but there's no way we're losing now. That's kind of the other side of the coin, is being able to offer it essentially as a way to kind of overcome a difficult challenge in one way or another.
Yep, I'm trying to keep the requirement of doing those things down, because I think you can get the same feeling of we have achieved something together, we have spent in the time and the brains in interesting gameplay too. You can like spend 3 hours on PvP today and like try to do something with people and competing with other people, and you can also spend that time killing monsters to prepare for the really big fight that's going to happen. So I think we can replace a lot of this with the other thing without removing the part of I have achieved something, I have put in the time from the game. So at least that's my theory.
So there is some sort of progression curve then. What would that progression curve look like? Is it different for different players? Or are we all kind of doing the same thing?
It's kind of a relative flat progression. So in the game, you're not gonna acquire massive amounts of powers as your character grows older and you spend more time on the game. So what we're doing, if we just talk like basic levels, because we do have levels, and levels give you skill points, and skill points allow you to make your skills, your active abilities stronger to a degree, but they also mostly allow you to branch out and get a lot of more of them that you can then like select your skill pool from. And getting those skill points comes over three things. A, we give you free XP every day that you don't have to do anything for. You don't even have to log in for it. It's basically EVE, but you don't have to log in for it. And that's being done just so that I have the feeling of progression as the server grows older, and everybody gets that, even if you didn't log in for a couple of days. Then B, you get XP for all active tasks that you do. And that can be PvP, that can be killing of monsters if you enjoy that. That can be crafting, that can be building a city, all things that are like active that you do. And then the third part of the XP comes from items that you get from the game world. Again, you can find them on monsters, but you also get in a lot of PvP matches. And those items, you can use them on yourself and make your character stronger, but you can also trade them to other players, which makes for this interesting mechanic that if you play the game and you log in every day and you play like 4 hours every day, you build up a surplus of these things. And they're not going to make you stronger in any way, right? You just have them. But if I, as your guildmate, I'm like, hey, I couldn't play last week because I don't know, I had to take care of my baby. Then you're like, hey, well, that's no problem. Like, you could have farmed this for yourself, but I have them. You're going to give them over to me. So basically, your progression is going to be pretty much like this, going up straight, and mine's going to be like, zip, and that's going to be you helping me. And then I get into the game and I'll play a little more, and like I can easily catch up to you to that point. So in the end, everybody will kind of like progress to a cap, not at the same speed, but we're going to easily reach the same point at the same time, even if we spend in different like amounts of time in the game.
Yeah, we're used to talking about that in terms of shallow vertical progression and wide horizontal progression. That seems to be the new place devs are trying to get us to, and I think that's a fairly good plan. That steep, super 100-level vertical progression just ended up in the long run, I think, not being where we want to be.
Especially in PvP. I mean, I think we've seen that in like mostly World of Warcraft vanilla back in the days, that just a couple of levels basically made you unkillable to other players, or just a couple of like equipment items made you so much stronger. It's just not fun, right? It's just not fun if you can't compete with someone because that person either had like more luck with drops, or just spent more time on it. What I want is a game where, yes, you can. Yeah, like if you have better gear and you have spent more time, you will be stronger than your opponent in just like base strength, but it won't be by a factor of 10 or 100. It'll be by like 1.5. And if I'm more skilled than you, or more lucky right now, or like it's two of us, I'm still going to take you down. That's kind of, it's not going to be this like zip curve going up like this. And instead, as you spend more time, you acquire more skills that give you more versatility, more flexibility in combat, but you still can't use them at the same time, because in our game you select 8 abilities and then you pick from your skill pool. So yeah, that's the horizontal progression you've been talking about.
Yeah, I personally really like the passive and active component going on with it, because on one hand, like I think of Eve, for example, you can gain the skills passively over time, so you don't have to be actively doing the things. But at the same time, it's a rich get richer sort of situation. If you've been playing the game for 5 more years than the next person, you've got all the mods and implants and stuff to gain your skills quicker, and the skills that you're gaining are ones that are in the month plus range because you've already got all the lower stuff. So you're basically growing into the top level stuff, while other people are spending a year just to get to the point where they can actually do something meaningful in end game sort of stuff. This is definitely a solution for that, where everybody is always brought up. so there's no amount of being completely useless. You come in, you might not have gotten a chance to assign your skills and everything, which is why it's one of the things you can do right up front in the neutral town if you don't get ganked there. But it's something that you can definitely do to get all set and all ready. And that's actually something I was kind of wondering, is the first time entering a world, maybe that'd be an interesting mechanic if it's more than a level 1 sort of situation, that you get a chance to actually assign your skills before you jump in, just so that way if there is neutral town ganking going on, you don't immediately walk into a situation where you can't really play and it's like, well, these guys are trolling, but there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that we have to distinguish between two kinds of players. There's you coming in the game who has played that before, right? Who comes into his 5th server as a level 1, and what you want is you want to be combat ready from the first. You want to have your 8 abilities, maybe even pick a couple of them already. Then I have my complete newbie, who if I throw him into the game with a skill bar full of 8 skills, he's just mostly going to be paralyzed like this. So that's why for this version of the game, we cut that down to I think 4 skills that you start with right now. There has to be a proper solution for that for me. So there needs to be a kind of controlled newbie experience where you can slowly ease into that stuff. But I think, pros will want to get a faster start to that stuff. So we're probably going to make it in some way that newbies also have those 8 skills, but we're first going to display only 1 or 2 of them, get them to use those, and then add the other ones quick in there.
So you're gonna make newbies actually learn in the field. There's no tutorial. It's you just jump straight. Oh, that reminds me of PlanetSide 1. The first time you play it, it's just instant actions you in to some major battle. You drop out. You're in your pajamas. You've got the suppressor carbine. You're you could be worse off, but it's hard. And you get gunned down real quickly, and it's what gun did they have? How did they do that? Oh, I better go back to the start zone and get to level 6 in the training area, which, it's what everybody did.
I think we've seen it on EVE Online and also on Darkfall. They've both experimented heavily with tutorial systems over the last 6 to 10 years, and they've both kind of reached a point now where they drop the player in the world and be here's a couple helpful pop-ups and here's a couple guides on things you can try out. And now try it out. I think it's probably going to land with a similar system for us eventually too. And since you don't have a lot to lose as a newbie in the beginning, that's not bad. You will die and you will be confused and then die more because you are confused, and that's totally okay. Slowly you're going to grow into it. I think that's probably the most promising way for a sandbox, open, unstructured game right now.
The idea of a traditional tutorial is pretty. I want to say dead. I want to say the idea of a traditional tutorial zone where you go and you learn how to swing your sword is pretty much out. And being able to give players tooltips and organically introduce them to the world is is where we're going.
Yeah. But the thing is, we'll have to try that out because in the end, even EVE Online in the beginning, totally protects you from other players, because once you're trying to figure out, oh, if I press this key, I move forward, and then you get ganked 5 times, that is disruptive, right? And I don't want to fix this problem by adding safe zones to the games. I'm not 100% sure how we're going to fix this. Maybe a 1 minute offline, this is how you walk thing will be necessary. Shards Online just added that, but we'll see.
Actually, so I had a question about towns and cities, and I saw something about the players building those and protecting them. So how does that work?
Right now, it's very simple. There are ways in the game to gain resources, basic stuff like hemp, wood, clay. Right now, there's only a couple of basic ways you can loot them, and you can do fights for resource spawns that if you once you win that fight, that resource will give you resources for basically for a day. Then you can take those resources, you bring them to a settlement, you claim that settlement, and super basic right now, you drop the right amount of resources into a ruin, you press the button, the ruin turns into the building that has a couple of functions. This eventually will get a little fancier, where you have a bigger selection of buildings that you can have, where you can upgrade those buildings so they get like a little stronger over time, where you can specialize more, where you also get to the point where there's 15 buildings that you want to have, but your settlement slot has only like 7 slots. What do? Do you get a second one? Is it worth that risk? That kind of stuff. And that is the scope that we have right now. Eventually, I would be super happy if we could do a more free-form, like pick where you put your building in your settlement, Shadowbane kind of style of building. But right now, that's not in our scope. That's like just too complicated. It's going to take too much time.
Yeah.
So
but that's
are there
eventually where I kind of want to get to.
Are there starting towns?
Right now, there's
buildings
one starting town.
Okay.
Yeah, right now there's like one neutral settlement where you have access to some basic training, some basic crafting that is not high level, but it's good enough for like newbies to like get used to that systems.
And each server, the servers reset. When they reset, you have to rebuild these buildings.
Everything. Okay, so the servers do not reset as in a way that the same server is going to come up again. Is we're starting a game world. The game world has like a map, and it has a rule set, and it runs for a certain time, and then it ends, and it's done, and that world is gone, it doesn't come back. You start on a new game world. That new game world most likely has a different map, might be slightly randomized, might be completely different. It will probably have a different set of rules, say like, hey, there's a new class that's now in, or the other one is like gone, or whatever stuff we do. We'll have different players, and you play on that world. And you will not take anything that is in-game power from world A to world B. So your character will start at the lowest level, most likely, if we don't make a rule set where you start maxed out. But unlikely, but could happen, right? You're not going to take equipment from A to B. You're not going to take your settlement from A to B. Because what we want is that every player who starts in a new game world has exactly the same chances of winning that. Keeping in mind that some people are just better than others, keeping in mind that some people are just way more experienced than others, or bigger clans or whatever. But we don't want to have the problem of, hey, those guys won the last server, and now they're coming with all this stuff to the next server, and then they're going to win that again. And like, right, you can never break that. That's what we want to get rid of. That's what I learned playing Shadowbane back in the days, and that's also what the people behind Crowdfall say very heavily influenced them. Back in Shadowbane, it was never designed to be that way, but servers still ended very fast because the population just dwindled, and they had to like merge them together and set up new ones. And it was always awesome when that happened, because you were always like, okay, nice, a new server is going to start. Like, we're going to have completely new alliances. We're going to have new people coming back. We're going to have others dropping out. It's most likely also going to come with like a bigger patch, and the patch is going to change balancing and everything. And they often introduce new map sets. And it was always like super exciting, because it always feels like a completely new game. It's like you're starting a new game, but without the risk of that game sucking completely, right? Because when you go into in a new MMO, you're always like super hopeful, and in the end, it's rarely the game that you really want. So what I hope is that for us, it will be that you will always be in a game where you know you really enjoy the base game, but we're going to modify so many things that it always feels different and always feels new. You always have this experience of like exploring a new thing. That is the premise that we started with Hollywood.
Are players voting for the type of rule sets and worlds? How is
As the thing is, we have not figured out or published the way how this is going to work. Eventually, we're going to experiment with stuff, and we're going to see what works. Like, I guess in the beginning, we are going to figure out the rule sets. And maybe we'll invite a couple of players to like help us figure out rule sets. And then maybe we give streamers the ability to set up a new rule set. Maybe we give everyone the ability. Maybe we're like, everybody can propose a new rule set, but the rule set only starts if enough people have voted for it, or even paid for it. That is all like totally open. We just know that we want those different rule sets, and it's very likely that it's not going to be only us who's going to make them. I have this dream of a really nice editor kind of web-based tool where you can select and figure out what kind of world you want to build, and then you click like publish, and then other people can be like, oh, yeah, I want that, and like upvote it, but we'll see.
And
that
then
sounds like fun.
Lore-wise, how does is your character persistent from world to world, or is it kind of completely new character too?
So I would say your account, and to that account belongs a name under which you're known, and to that account belongs like the history you had on other servers, the achievements you had on other servers. That kind of stuff is persistent. But the character itself, as in how many skill points have I spent on stuff, what gear do I wear, that is not persistent. So most likely if we play and I met you in the other game world, I will recognize you because you're going to have the same name, and maybe I will recognize that you have a couple, say, cosmetic upgrades that you can only have gained in that time, but you're not going to have the same sword, or you're not going to have the same character build as in the last world, because you're free to like pick a new one this time.
Yeah, that's
So
pretty cool.
what ends the world lore wise?
So that is a little bit undecided still. we've been we've been throwing around ideas that are somewhere between it's the most likeliest case is that the people who control the outside city at some point decide, you guys have grown too strong, you're too much of a nuisance, we're going to come in and we're going to end you. So I expect a big wave of really strong NPCs coming in, attacking everybody on sight. This will be most likely, because we haven't tried that out, coupled with a rule that says, from now on, no more respawning. When you die, you're dead. It's now permadeath. And then basically the question is, how long do I survive? And can I actually finish a couple of goals that make me like the winner of the server, or at least the person who like gets out alive, gets to do more, or do I die trying that? That is what we're currently
So
trying.
it kind of sounds like we always lose.
You kind of, for now,
But
probably
you
always
lose the best.
Long term, exactly. Long term, like you lose the best. Long term, it would be awesome if you could actually like the people who like are really like good and like survive a long time, actually being able to like kind of like fight their way out and like take back their home, take back the city from which they were driven out. But that is not designed yet, and or the assets haven't been made for it. So no promises on that yet. But yeah, you always know that the world is gonna end, and the world is gonna end. You're not gonna change that this server is gonna end. You're not. Right, we have been thinking about like, oh, maybe we could like let it run for an extra day or something if people are like really successful, but probably not, because it's not about prolonging the whole thing. It is about like ending it with a bang, with a really epic fight, with something that everybody's like, it was amazing that I was in there, and now I'm gonna start something new.
But
It
there is
sounds like Ragnarok.
some sort of tracking, leaderboard tracking, or something that makes me feel like I did something in this world, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like we've already started tracking all kinds of things, and I'm not sure which ones I'm going to display to you, because tracking things also leads to people doing certain things. So if I really prominently score, like show your kill score, then people will obviously optimize for killing as many people all the time, right? Ganking noobs over and over again. So I have a couple more composite scores that kind of score how dominant you were in this game world, or how efficiently you reached your goals, or how elegant you reached your goals, for example, without violence. So I'm gonna, for example, score you on how much of the game world you controlled, how many settlements you held, how many resources you gained, but factoring in how little violence did you have to put in for that. So for every person you did not have to gank because you actually got stuff via diplomacy, I'm going to reward you a little. And that kind of stuff is going to be tracked, and eventually I guess there will also be like certain achievements for certain feats that you can like only reach like once per server, or maybe you can only reach one of them for each server. And yeah, this kind of stuff is going to be tracked, displayed in your account if you want it displayed, but I guess you do. Yeah.
So that actually makes me think of something really cool. The way the normal servers could end is definitely that like it gets to a point and then it becomes permadeath, like after the 7 week out of an 8 week campaign or something. The last week or whatever is maybe permadeath, or maybe the last 2 days of it. And basically, the way that you win or escape is that you need to be part of the last group remaining that opens the portal and lets them out of there. So you could wait. You could be like a holdout, you and a few other people, towards the very end, and when that last group thinks they're getting through, you and 4 other people disband and just start raising hell. And it's like you get to lose two, and you get to lose two, and you get to lose two until they rally together and take you guys out, just to minimize the amount of gains that group gets at the very end, just to be a jerk, and that itself would have potential scoring opportunities.
Yeah, I want to see a lot of like diplomacy, backstabbing, traitors, and treachery, because outside of real life, that is actually really fun. That is stuff that leads to the memorable moments, right?
Yes.
That's exactly the stuff that I want to happen in the end. Yep.
That's awesome.
We already had a guy collect like all of the resources needed to build a settlement, and then they'd put it inside like the settlement center, and then he just dropped clan and built it himself, and he had like a settlement to himself and like 20 other people standing there just like So yeah, that's definitely the sort of thing that can happen.
That's awesome.
Oh man. That guy needs a new clan for the next playtest.
He's gonna have to change his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's gonna be epic.
I mean, that's one of the funny things. Before you actually have a settlement established, you basically have to use barrels and stacks and stuff that exist in the world to hide your stuff and hope people don't go there. So It's a really funny procedure.
Yeah. So eventually there's going to be a small limited stash where you can put some items in that are going to be like safe for you, and people are not going to like be able to steal them from you. But it's always going to be like very limited. Most of the items, especially like the more expensive ones, the more useful ones, the resources, are in a way going to be like endangered by other people, and you have to be smart by like hiding them, at least in these early stages. So that's what people are doing right now. When I play the game with our clan, our people, I always designate one hiding spot where we stash all our resources, and we try to like set up a little bit of a perimeter around it to keep other players away from it. That's already like quite fun. If we could all just put that in our bank and it would be safe instantly, then all that fun would already be lost. So that's kind of the like the sandboxy thing too, right? If we design the game, we should design it in a way that maximizes interaction with other players, that maximizes fun things that can happen, and not like trying to take that away too much. That's always been my beef with most like EverQuest, World of Warcraft, very restrictive experiences where they mostly were like, so this thing could lead to a bad experience for some players. Let's take it out for everybody. That's kind of not the design philosophy that we're going to run with this game. And so, yeah.
Gotcha. So I want to kind of change tracks here a little bit. I wanted to ask about the Kickstarter, because you guys have a Kickstarter going on. Anybody in chat right now, anybody watching this on YouTube, there is a Kickstarter going on right now for Dust Hall. And I wanted to actually ask, how's the Kickstarter been going? And along with that, how did you guys actually come up with the tiers and the rewards for those tiers?
Mm-hmm. So the tiers are a bit based on what we've done before. We had a development supporter pack system before. Was us crowdfunding the game on our own website. It was a bit based on that. It was basically the thought that we don't have a lot of things that we're gonna sell to you, right? We're not gonna sell any in-game power of any sort. So we call them development supporter packs because they were meant for you to support our development. The one thing that the main decision point is like, when do you start playing the game? You want to start right now or later? And which of those things that are nice like visuals and nice rewards for you, but not gonna give you power, do you want to have? So we have stuff in there like skins for your characters, armor for your weapons, especially for the newbie ones. We have stuff in there like enemies, and we have stuff in there that is more uh, like for example, like save your character name, which is something that like everybody like really enjoys. Like I know myself, that's something that I always go for. I really like to save my character name, even though most likely it's not going to be stolen anyways. But it's something that's important to me, so like that's something I'm going to save. How's the Kickstarter going itself? The first days have been really good. We had like 33% funded about 6 days in or so. I think 25% in 3 or 4 days in, which is exactly what you want to hit with your Kickstarter campaign. The last days, you can see that on Kickdrag have been like really slow. So right now we're in the point in like the death valley of Kickstarters between like week 2 and the end of week 3, right? Where it's like super slow and like not a lot of people are coming in because the like first press like has happened, and now everybody's kind of waiting for like the kind of end sprint that's gonna happen. So what we're doing is we're trying to like still like push out content every day, right? We're doing a Kickstarter update every day, and every day this update has something new about the game that we either haven't shown or haven't shown in detail. It could be a new video, could be new stuff. Like we release stuff about like all our weapons, our armors, our abilities, the buildings that we have, the events we're going to have, and that kind of stuff. And we're going to keep on doing that for the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're also thinking about putting in like new tiers. So for example, some people were like, hey, I really want like a 4-pack so I can play this with my 4 friends. And other people were like, hey guys, I think this is too expensive. I want like a cheaper version like that gets me into the game without having to invest like $40. And that's all kind of things that we're thinking about that we're gonna like try to figure out next week what we're gonna change up in there. What's not gonna change is the like frequent updates that is set for us right now.
Gotcha. Right. Well, that's I mean, I guess it's not only as good that you guys got the initial part, but you also kind of recognize the fact that it does kind of slow down after that first week. And you know, it sounds like you guys, you know, definitely with, you know, keeping up with the updates and stuff, kind of have a plan of action then to try to keep things, you know, interesting and try to keep more eyes looking at the project here. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys also have a playtest on Sunday. So, are you guys going to be streaming that out? Are you going to be having people kind of broadcast that, or is that going to stay closed and in-house?
So, in who? Go ahead.
Well, it's primarily a clan test. Like we've been talking to a bunch of clans that have come and tested with us a lot before, like LOD, a couple of the very PvP-based clans, and they've all got streamers that typically stream whatever game they're playing at the time. So we're going to list those people's streams. I think one of us will probably stream as well, and we'll list that on the Kickstarter and our forums and all that. It might be me, it might be Mikhail because my internet's terrible. But yeah, we're definitely, like, we'll record video as well and post it on YouTube. We definitely want people to take a look at the gameplay itself. Like, it's not something we want to keep behind closed doors.
Yeah, it's also not going to be the last playtest. I think we have 1 or 2 more that we would like to do during the campaign. It always depends a bit on how feature development goes, because we're not doing promotional playtests here. We're doing like actual like new features that we just developed. So like the siege system that we are gonna try out for the first time in this playtest, it's gonna be a first. Like nobody has seen that before. We've been working on that like behind closed doors. And I still have like a list of QA tasks to do tomorrow to actually like get it to the point where it's like ready for prime time, and that's what we're doing. So that's why we also haven't invited a lot of like outside people in right now. We do let some streamers in for like reasons of documentation and showing people what's happening, but mostly we're focused on our closed alpha testers or clan testers because it's going to be a very rough build that will have problems, bugs, and will fail because that's early alpha development. That's what we're doing.
Okay. And that kind of rolls into the next question I had here was how you guys felt about doing like a public demo server during the Kickstarter so that people can actually know what they're paying for, or try out some of the systems. Now, I had even suggested in the Skype chat before the show the idea of just 1/6 of the map, just the starter town, with like some just ridiculous rule sets just for the hell of it, like self AOE's only or archers only one shot kills. Just to show like the range of what can happen in the game, what kind of ridiculous rule sets or interesting sorts of gameplay can actually come about.
Yeah, we have been thinking about that, and we have been discussing that. Dave was like a big proponent of, hey, let's let people play this thing. My thing is always like, I'm the designer, and I know what the game is supposed to do and what I want it to do and what features I need to get it to that point, and I know that I'm not at that point yet. Now I know that if I drop everybody in this game right now, most people are going to be like, what? This is really complicated. This is no hand-holding. The whole UI is completely weird. It's just not good yet. And all that kind of stuff. And I normally don't want to burn too many people with that experience. On the other hand, we have made a lot of the game already, and like people can try that out, right? So we are actually still discussing this internally. Like, there's a chance that if Dave gets his way, then we're gonna do a more open test soonish and let more people in. But no promises yet. We still honestly haven't decided on that yet. Maybe on Monday we'll get to that.
Yeah, no, that is really a big deal. Like it's one thing to do, I'm not necessarily going to say you guys are doing full open development because there's definitely a lot of stuff behind closed doors, but it's kind of open development. You guys kind of put yourselves out there. People have been able to see what gameplay looks like. Non-press, non-media people have been able to actually jump in and play and give you guys feedback. So it's not full on open development, but it's definitely not like the closed doors days of old. So I guess how's that been helping you guys at all, or has it been something that's been like helpful or difficult to manage in any way?
Yeah, good and bad. So the game has been playable by people who are not us for about 2 years in different forms, right? Even the first prototypes that we made that were, you might have seen like stuff in the Kickstarter video. It looked like a game maker game, totally 2D. We built it on Lua, whatever. Even that we played with people, and that was really helpful because we really had a time to like nail down our core movement and combat stuff. But on the other hand, there is a million ugly screenshots and videos and recording of our game on the web, and if someone looks up stuff and he doesn't find the latest stuff, he'll be like, what the fuck is this? Like, why is this game so horribly ugly? Why does it look so buggy? Why is everything so bad? And it's because we have been showing the game as we're developing it for like since day one, basically. And it's a bit of a rough time sometimes because for people who are not that much into game development, you're competing with a AAA studio that will have spent a budget of 50 million and like 3 years of work on the teaser trailer that they're showing at E3. That's going to be like, this is the game, right? Or you're competing with a Blizzard who has like an alpha game out there that has obviously had like 3 years of development and like has 2 million players right now. And then you have your crappy little alpha thing that has actually been in development for like a month, and you get compared with that. So it's a little rough sometimes. But I don't know, like the jury for me is still out. Like, should even a small team like ours try to go for like the big unveiling of the game after like 2 years of work and actually risk that it's just like not that cool? I don't know. I still like the being able to show what I'm doing kind of thing because it allows me to get feedback on stuff and then change stuff. And there have been a couple quite bigger changes just from the people who have played the game. So yeah. Pros and cons.
Fair enough. So, here's something that I've been wondering. We've seen it happen with TCGs. We've seen it happen with the Dota-style MOBA that originated in Warcraft 3. We've seen it happen with Tower Defense that also originated in Warcraft 3. That game was pretty revolutionary, wasn't it? Copycat games. It's happened with match 3 games, casual games. Happened with Flappy Bird. So they happen. So here's the question: is if Dust Hall is successful, do you anticipate seeing copycat projects from larger studios?
I was gonna say, like, so
we're already
if you
being
talk
compared
about,
with like Purple and Albion.
yeah, exactly.
Like
So
people are
like,
already saying that like
there are people who had the same thought that we had and they did not go forward. There are people who tried and failed. There are people who tried, succeeded, but didn't show their game. And there's Crowdfall who like did all those things and actually succeeded. So we are not the only ones with this idea. Never have been, never will be. Am I afraid of others copying our game directly or cloning it? No, because the smaller single developers who tend to clone popular mobile games cannot clone our game because it's just too much work. This is a really big project for a tiny studio. It's not clonable by them. Will the big studios clone us? No. Will they get inspired and copy us? Yes, but only if we're very successful. So once we have 1 million players, then I don't know, the studios who like churn out MOBAs nowadays for different platforms, for different publishers will be like, oh, we can also make that. But they will start doing that once we are successful. If we are not successful, or if we stay in a niche that doesn't look like it's going to pay their, I don't know, 2 to 10 million budgets back, then they're not going to do that. So not much afraid of that. Am I afraid that there is some cannibalization between games that are similar in some aspects? Yes, I am afraid. So like people are like, so this Crowdfall game or this Dastal game, which one should I play? And some people will decide, I'm going to play Crowdfall. Like this is obviously, it has all these things and like very experienced developers, and they're not going to play our game at first. But I think, especially if I look at hardcore PvP players, we tend to play all the games, right? We rarely just stick with this one game and then never try out the other one. And so I think that's not gonna destroy us. On the other hand, there's also been a lot of people who were like, hey, I just found your game because I found this Crowdfall game, and then I found your game, and I like, Crowdfall got me into thinking that, hey, I think these like worlds that end after a time might be awesome, and now I also like your game. So this is also a thing that's gonna happen, right? Them being successful will make us more successful. And so again, pros and cons, and we'll have like both of these things.
Yeah, if they do well, I mean, kind of in a way, you do well, and if we just keep iterating on the genre, that just helps
Exactly.
everybody.
This thing, it's going to become a genre after a while, and then you're going to be like
Yeah.
the first or one of the first games in the genre, which is always good, right? If I look at the MOBA genre, then I mean, there is basically League of Legends, and then comes Dota 2, and then comes stuff like very far behind as far as players go. And why is that? That is because Riot Games was the first to like commercialize the mod and turn it into like the full product itself, and for other reasons. But and so like being first in that thing is going to be really helpful and good for us. Like at the point where the other studios recognize, oh, this is a thing that actually works, we'll have been working on this for like 4 years, and that is just something that is hard to like even if and especially if you're a big studio, that's something that's really hard to like catch up.
Yeah, and you know, when I think about Riot, it's like they were already doing well, and then all of a sudden, Tencent's like, here's $500 million to keep doing what you're doing. Yeah! So, you know, it'd be a huge break for you guys if that sort of thing came through.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's something that would ever come through because, like, to be honest, we are a more niche game, right? Like Riot Games does for MOBA what Blizzard does for every other genre, which is making it accessible for a broader audience. And we're obviously not the people who are that much focused on that. We are still very much focused on a niche of players that is like similar to us. And yes, we do have aspirations of at some point converting 0.01% of the MOBA players to our game. Be like, hey, this could also be something for you. But we're not going for that like huge broad market anyways. So yeah, we're probably not going to sell our company to Tencent. Also because we do not want to sell it. Like we started into this project, Sebi, my co-founder, and I, with the decision that this is a 10-year project for us. I mean, maybe it fails and maybe we have to stop at some points because we find out it's just like bad, the game's never going to work, whatever. But if the game works or even works to a degree, then this is a 10-year project for us, and we want to build up something for us, and we don't intend to sell. Yeah.
I mean, the other option is if it doesn't go the way you guys want, you could either go like making an RTS with it, or making a
Yeah,
Torchlight
MOBA game
style, Diablo style kind
or
of
an
action
RPG.
RPG. Yeah.
Has the game, oh, because you guys have been doing this, what'd you say, like 7 years?
Yep.
Has the vision for the game changed significantly in that amount of time then?
So we have been working this for like 2.5 years, and the vision kind of is like 6 years old. Yes, it has changed massively. So I started out with I want to make a better MMO, better Shadowbane thingy, Shadowbane 2. And then I had to figure out what does it actually mean, and I came up with the whole concept of like worlds that end after a time, smaller worlds, a leaner MMO. And then over time, this whole like we're gonna get more of these like mobile combat aspects in thing developed into the game. The whole like we have footsteps and there's a lot of emphasis on like sneaking and being in the bushes. All of that was never planned. That just happened because at one day we were like, hey, can we put footsteps into the game and then like everybody can see where everybody else went? And so the game has been developing a lot in that direction. And the whole like, so right now I'm putting a big emphasis onto events that are gonna happen in the game world that are, if you come from a MOBA background, it is like the in League of Legends, the Dragon Fight or the Baron, same thing you have in Dota, right? That is something that's also like pretty new, and I think that's gonna actually develop to like a core part of the game. And 6 months ago, I didn't even know that was gonna be a core part of the game. So the general gist of it is a hardcore PvP sandbox MMO in my head. That is not going to change. The whole thing with I want to take out all this unnecessary grind and make a game that is super deep and super hardcore, but also accessible for people who have a job and who don't have the time, that is not going to change. But a lot of the how are we going to actually make this happen has changed and will still change.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I guess, Skyla or Diggs, did either of you have any other questions? Or actually, Alex or David, did you have any questions for us?
Huh. I do have one. I find it interesting. If you look at our game and you just look at the screenshots and videos and the art style, what other games, what other stuff does it remind you of? What comes to your head at first?
Somewhere between action RPGs and Dota style MOBAs. It's mostly because of the perspective and the access to the toolbar and the skills, more than anything. Also the polish and the scale of everything. That the characters aren't so small that it feels kind of Dota style MOBA-ish, but at the same time, you have enough visual fidelity that you can see what abilities people are using, where they're using them, and that's kind of an important thing about the game because you actually need to be able to anticipate attacks and get out of the way. So it's mostly like somewhere between those two, the ARPG and the Dota style MOBA is what it initially looked like to me.
If I go to like just your Kickstarter and I just scroll down it and just visually glance at things, the first impressions type stuff, I see like UO and Path of Exile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those are the first things I see.
That's pretty fair.
That's
Like,
stuff
just
we hear
simply,
of the online,
yeah.
interestingly, and MOBAs. And Tibia, for some reason. Tibia, which is a really old game nowadays. A lot of people like reading what we write also like, this is totally like Tibia, which is weird to me because it's not, but yeah. I have one more question to you guys, which is super interesting to me, and that is like, if knowing what you know right now, what's the biggest threat that we have? What is our biggest weakness right now? If you could change something about the game, what would you guys change?
Oh, in the actual game, or just about like the campaign you're doing, or anything?
Whatever comes to your mind.
Well, I could be a game designer on the project, so I guess because I'm not on the team. No, I'm kidding. I'm already set with what I'm doing. No, geez, that's a tough question. So far, I think maybe it's just finding more ways to incorporate, what sounds like a pretty cool story into the game itself. Perhaps you don't spawn into the world immediately when you log in and create your character, so much as you do like I think one of the Battlefield games does, where you maybe I'm thinking of the wrong game, where you're on a timer, and when that timer is up, you and everybody else who's coming in that wave come in on like a wagon or something, and then maybe it's different events. Maybe like sometimes the wagon gets all the way to the starter town, sometimes it gets attacked by other players, sometimes a wheel just falls off, or NPCs rush out of one of the nearby areas if the map is designed in that way. So basically something that you're being transported to the valley from, wherever you're being subjugated. Either you're left off and it goes back on its merry way, and potentially you can attack it and get wood and hemp and other resources for taking it out and salvaging it. But basically something that you're deploying people in a way that's a little bit more meaningful, and during that time period, while the timer's ticking down, if they don't want to go in on that wave, they can go in on the next wave. But that allows them to do that thing we were kind of talking about earlier, where they can actually define their skills, and if they're new to the game, that would actually give them the opportunity to do like a quasi tutorial sort of thing, click over here to move, grunt, and etc., in like a very, very basic sort of environment before they finally actually go in. So that way they actually have a chance to understand what's going on, and they're being told, in the story, why they're being sent to this terrible place, and why they have to, fight for their life and respawn at spawn points until that no longer is an option.
Got it. Yeah. Reminds me a lot of Gothic, which is one of the other big inspirations for this game, which probably none of you have ever played, because it's a game that barely made it out of Germany, but it's a really dark fantasy 3D role-playing game that, surprise, puts the player in a mining valley that has been walled off, where only criminals are left. Ooh, big surprise. So somebody might have stolen stuff there. And it starts pretty interesting by you getting lowered into this valley on an elevator. And there's a pretty key moment. It's something I would also like to have in our game at some point, is introduction. It's not just you spawn the game and then stuff happens and you're confused. So yeah, we need that at some point.
Oh, geez, I guess maybe the one other thing is sometimes I have a hard time telling what exactly somebody's using. Like my first time playing, not knowing what the weapons are, what the armors are, and not understanding why did that person just magically make me get attracted to them and they're beating on my face, or explaining how the bow works a little bit so people aren't trying to run and gun and realize, oh wait, that doesn't quite work. That sort of basic stuff. And I'm sure you'll work out a lot of that stuff. When do you guys actually plan to be launching? I'm going to ask real quick. Roughly.
Launch is always a hard question, because when does a game that's already out and for playable launch? So what we're saying right now is that next year we're going to want to launch the game in a 1.0 capacity, probably around Q3. I think we put the dates on our Kickstarter. The next step that is now more of a mini launch is that in the next couple months we're going to go from alpha tested only for a certain short amount of time. We're going to go to the server is going to run for 24/7. That for me personally is also kind of a launch event, and that's going to happen in the next 2 months, I would say maybe 3, but around that time. And then in between we're going to go to a more beta milestone where we were okay, the major features are now in, and we're going to mostly focus on adding smaller things, polishing stuff up. That's about our scope.
Gotcha. So actually I want to throw your question back to Skyla and Diggs here. Is there anything that either of you saw that, or have played, or anything that you think should be done different about the game or the project or the studio or their logo or anything?
The typeface that they're using on their graphic materials. Oh man, that's rough. No, I think I've gotten more about the vision of the project by talking to you guys than I get from the campaign. So I think it's a presentation of vision and where you're going? Because I see what you're doing. I see that this game exists and this is the basic concept of the game, but the future of the game is something that that I'm getting talking to you that I'm not getting there, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
I'm nodding my
completely
head.
valid.
So yeah, you're like, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
Yes, we've been working on this for 2 years and we're still not good at it.
Yeah.
No, I completely understand like the whole tunnel vision. You're so focused on getting the project together that like all the other dealings and media and presentation, all of that stuff sometimes falls by the wayside.
Yeah.
I've
I
been,
mean, we're
it's
actually spending a lot of time on this compared as how small our team is. So Dave is mostly exclusively working on that, and I am also spending like probably most of my day on like actually like explaining what the game is in different ways rather than like working on the game. And other people's also helping out with stuff, so that's actually a big part of development. But the problem is that like for me, for myself, it's really hard to explain to you what's awesome about the game because it's so obvious to me. It's so fucking obvious in my head. It's just like, do I even have to explain to you how awesome this game is? Because right, I've been breathing this for like 2.5 years now, and I think everybody else on the team is also kind of like infected by that.
yeah.
So we already have this vision, and it's like that's also what's good about the Kickstarter. It forces us to get that out a little bit, get more information out to people, and we're still not like really good at it, but we're like way better than we were like I don't know 2 months ago or even 2 years ago.
yeah. Well, I mean,
So
the
once the
Kickstarter
game is
kind of
out
forced
for
us
like 4 years, we're going to be good, huh?
Go
the
for it.
Kickstarter kind of forced us to collect a lot more of those ideas. Like we had a lot of promotional material, like videos, like here's some PvP footage and stuff like that. But putting together a Kickstarter, you're obviously going to have, we're not talking to people who have been on our forums for 3 months. We're talking to people who are like, oh, a Kickstarter, click. So we need to be like, all right, here, this is what we have. Try and give them the information, and that's kind of been one of the biggest challenges because. Figuring out what priority to give that information on a Kickstarter page is kind of difficult. When we're having a conversation like this, we can touch on all different topics and bounce back and forth and let it flow. But when you're just dishing up information on a page, it's kind of hard. But that's kind of what we're trying to do with the updates as well. Like every update is very concise, and people can see like, all right, this is what that update is, and it's like a 2-minute video that explains something like really explicitly. So hopefully those are doing their job.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to weigh in real quick and say that the main thing that I would change that seems like it's mostly been changed on your Kickstarter is this MMORPG. So I love the way it is on the Kickstarter where it says it's the first open world battle arena, and I think you guys should push that because that's what sounds exciting to me when I look at your gameplay. And I would probably reword the second sentence to say it's the love child of a fast-paced PvP arena and the sandbox MMORPG, because I think the focus is more really on the PvP arena. Because when I see MMORPG, I wouldn't play this game as an MMORPG because it doesn't have enough RPG in it. But open world battle arena, that really seems to me what the gameplay is, and I can see how that would be genre and kind of along the same lines as what Crowfall is trying to be. And I think that's a cool new genre that could be coming out pretty soon.
I think it's taken us
good feedback.
like yeah, I think it's just taken us a little bit of time to kind of adjust to thinking about the game that we already had it like so hard in our head. Like this is an MMORPG, and like what we're creating, we're trying to change MMORPGs, not create something different. And like in other people's eyes, we're creating something different, but what we're trying to do is change something that we did enjoy but saw problems in. And so I think we still kind of bounce back and forth from like with terminology here and there, and like we only came up with that like what 2 months ago or something when we were having like we were having a conversation with like a streamer and a couple of players, and we seriously just sat there and in like 5 minutes tried to explain what the game is in a like the best little acronym that we could come up with, and that's what we came up with. And we're like, sweet, all right, we're putting that on the Kickstarter page, it works.
Yeah. The other thing
Yeah.
is that it's taking me a really long time to go away from sandbox MMO, because sandbox MMO is what I like have been defining myself as a person that plays game with. Like for me, I have been playing sandbox MMORPGs very much exclusively, and admitting that my game might not be a sandbox MMORPG is really hard for me. Also, if I think about, so if I wasn't making this game, but I was looking for the game, what would I look for? What are the keywords that I would look for? So, and the keywords would be sandbox, MMORPG, and then open PvP and full loot. That is the stuff. That's also why these words are really important and like always pronounce it well, because that's what people are going to look for. Like it might in the end actually not be that anymore to a degree. But if I describe it as like a arena game or a MOBA or something, people are not gonna, like the right people are not gonna find it for now.
Yeah,
But I
that's,
hope
I mean,
that we
it's
get to the point with
basically,
our own genre.
yeah, no, that's basically sort of what I said in chat was like, open world battle arena is sort of accurate, but MMORPG gets people in the door, the people that you want to play.
It
And you're right, because
pisses
MOBA
me
is going to
off
get
and
you a
pushes me away.
completely different type of people. Yeah, well, yeah, but you have opinions.
I'm just saying.
The thing is, that is one of the risks we might have to take. We might have to take the risk to piss off 90% of the people who play MMORPGs to get the 10% that play PvP sandbox MMORPGs, because I would be really afraid of not getting those 10% by calling my game just a open world battle arena, because they're just never going to look for that.
We're also not talking
Prefer to piss
about.
off less.
We're also not talking about the big special word, esports. Esports. That's the other factor, the other angle you can work with it, because it's definitely that.
Do you want to work with something that's, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's
pretty
a good
volatile.
question. But that's a good question. Is that part of the population that you want to hit? Esports?
Kinda. The thing is, so I've actually quite recently gotten more into like passively watching esports with like basically all MOBAs and a lot of StarCraft. And I do think that there is quite an overlap with the MMO PvP crowd. I'm not 100% sure yet. The thing is, I think MMOs could have never become esports because they were never built for that, right? But our game, interestingly, does lead itself to a more session-based gameplay. It might be actually something that you might want to like cast and stream and like talk about afterwards. So maybe we are going to develop ourselves a little bit in that direction even.
I think especially the end game, the Ragnarok weeks might very well lend itself to that. That's fascinating.
Yep.
That could be. I mean, I'm even thinking of books that I've read where that's the those couple of weeks where everybody have the free for all. They could do whatever they want, and you're trying to see who's going to stay alive. That could be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about like how one game world that runs for like a month or two could actually be the equivalent to, say, a season in any given sports, right? So you also follow like whatever your team over the course of a year, and they have like this match and this match and this match, and maybe in our case that would be like the siege fight here, the battle for this big resource thingy, and in the end the big end fight. Maybe that's also something we can do. Maybe we can also have like this kind of like seasonal esports thingy going on with our game. We actually have to figure that out as it starts going into like 24/7 mode.
That could be a really cool. I think both you and Crowfall should think about that. That's interesting, huh?
No, let's not give them any hints. They're already so good. Like they don't need our hints.
It's a genre. It's a genre thing. It's not going to be a competition thing.
No, it's also that they're really
people.
good. I'm not afraid of competition. I'm just like, I'm watching their stuff and I'm just like, these guys are so smart. They're making so many smart decisions and they're so good at explaining what they're doing. It's amazing. I'm a big fan. I spend a lot of money on the Crowdfall Kickstarter too. I was like, this is a very good second bet. If my game's gonna fail, they're gonna make it. They'll jump in there too.
There you go. So
they're awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely something like when I kind of think of the comparison between the two, when I think of sitting down to play Crowfall, it's like when I'm going to play PlanetSide 2. I'm sitting down for like a 3 hour session. Versus if I want something for like 20 minutes, I'm just going to jump on like Team Fortress. And if it goes 3 hours, that's great. I kind of see the same sort of thing. If I'm going to be just looking for a short session, I'll probably just jump on Dostal, get my character in the world, skill up any that I have from the passive experience, and just go whack some faces. And if I'm with a group, just ask, hey, who's running things, and what do we need to do right now? What resources do we need, and that sort of stuff. So I could definitely see it being more for the not casual but shorter session audience. So
We need a good word for that, because I always try to say this is a kind of more casual PvP, but then it's not casual, right? It's just like
But it's
in the
definitely
face
still
all the time.
competitive.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's a shorter session. So how do you label
Exactly.
those people?
And
Yeah.
yeah. I label them me. Like this is me, which I'm just really hardcore, but I have no time and also no skill anymore. But I can also picture ourselves like the game becoming something that you play like say next to an EVE Online. EVE Online is the game where you go for the world that is like ever changing and the really like long stuff. And since you already played it for 6 years, you don't have the problem anymore that the character had to like grind up that way for that long time. And maybe that's how is the game where you're just like, hey, I really want to do some quick PvP today. I have like an hour or maybe I have 2 hours. I'm going to jump in there. And I'm not going to play Dota because Dota has like no overarching thing at all that like makes it meaningful to me. Because it's something I figured out about myself. I did play basically every MOBA that came out and every other arena game and stuff. They just never made me really happy because it was always like this throwaway feeling of like, yeah, it's a match. We're gonna play the match and we're gonna win or lose, and nobody really cares. So yeah, maybe we can like kind of fill that niche, that like the meaning that you only get from like the persistence and the multiplayer sandboxy aspects, but on a very limited time scale. That'd be good. That would be amazing.
very cool. So we have a couple of questions I wanted to get through here from the audience.
Mhm.
The first one is from Par Knight or Park Knight. I'm not sure which one that is, but they're asking about how big are servers expected to be.
So we expect to have 200 people logged into the game world at the same time, as we said before, and about 10 times that signed up for the game world in there somewhere. That probably means we have a couple dozen settlements around. Our game worlds are gonna be smaller than all other big MMOs by far, because I do not enjoy running through like empty worlds. Like both Darkfall and EVE Online really made me angry with so much empty space where nothing ever happens, and I don't like that. So they're gonna be way more condensed and compressed, but we still need enough settlements so that like at least most clans can get one most of the time. Right now, our game world is like 4 units large, and we expect it to land more somewhere between like 20 and 100 units, but that's gonna like grow over the next.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. The 4 units we're playing right now, it's like we take over the base on the left. There's only 2 more bases to take over. It's like, well, great. This would be a lot less defensible if they could actually come in from the north, but they can't. So, yeah, we're in great shape right now. So, yeah, definitely seeing a much larger world is something I'm really excited for going forward playing it.
Yes, but not too big. That's
Not too
important
big.
for me.
Definitely needs to be all the space being meaningful, being useful. No amount of
Exactly.
dead space in the world, which is another thing most MMOs have a problem with. They'll make a ton of content, and most people don't even see it all. So, in this case, you have to see everything. You have to use everything. Sometimes you're just escaping, and it's like, crap, I've never been here before, but it's better than facing that pack. So, it happens.
Yep.
I'm sure it's happened to everybody. So, see, it's a fun game, especially if you're, a little squishy wizard and a bunch of people are ganging up on you. It's like, I gotta get the hell out of here. So, Jaden Signal asks us a very technical question. How much are you testing netcode? And what are you doing to test the capacity that a server running the game can take? Are you considering co-location with a major POP? Or are you considering leasing VMs, etc.?
I am not the programmer of this game. This is the disclaimer, right? That being said, we have spent about a good part of the 1 year pre-production just evaluating server backends. We have settled down on the Photon server because it's technology that is really stable and fast, and also we have a really good direction to developers. How much is that being tested? There's a ton of automated tests that run through every build and also check how stuff is going while the game is running and in the playtest. Kind of hard to specify how much it is. I feel it's much. Are we thinking about co-location or whatever? We always dreamed of hosting the game in the cloud because that's super convenient, but also that's super expensive. So in the end, for most of our servers, it's going to run on go down on a very bare bone, we rent this physical server kind of model and only, they're probably not going to buy, but rent them. And only for some servers that we need to specifically spin up for some reason, we're going to go for the more cloudy kind of approach. Are we going to put our own physical hardware into a server center? Probably not in the first couple months, but eventually we want to cut down on cost, and maybe that's something we will kind of do. But we're currently totally evaluating what is the thing that in the end actually will give us the most server bang for our buck, but also not add too much server admin stress on our side because we are a tiny team. Yeah, more details, more questions, please via email. Because then someone can answer that question who actually knows what he's talking about.
Sounds good. All right. Well, it is about time for us to wrap up here, so I'm going to kind of go around one last time. Everybody say any last things you had to say here, and I'm going to get it started with everybody definitely check in here one more time on the Kickstarter. If you haven't put money in, put money in. If you have, put more money in, get more stuff. Or if you don't have that much money, find people you know who do and be like, hey, get this for me, or yourself, or both. I don't care. Just do the thing. And we'll definitely be on the lookout for the upcoming gameplay sessions because I'm really excited to see what's new with the game. So let's just kind of go clockwise like we did earlier, starting with you, Skylatron.
We're doing outros, right?
Yeah, basically.
All right. Firstly, it was really awesome to talk to you guys, and I got to learn a lot more about your game. So that was really exciting, and I'm a lot more stoked now that I got to talk to you about it. If you want to find me on the internet, I am Skylatron here on Twitch and Twitter.
All right. And Diggs.
Great. This was a great show and very informative. I guess the little bit of TheoryForge news we have is no revival cast this weekend, Memorial Day. And then you'll find me in the forums and on Twitter. Have fun.
That's always where you find Diggs. All right. David, off to you then.
Thanks a lot for having us on and asking some good questions and giving good feedback as well. It was awesome joining you guys.
For sure. It was great having you. And Alex, how about you?
Yes, I think I'm going to continue with saying thanks. Thanks to our community, all the people who back us right now and support us. You guys are awesome. Also, a big thanks to everybody who is in the games industry and who never treats us like competition, but always treats us as friends and helps us out with stuff. There's a big thanks that actually goes to the Crowdfall team. It's a big thanks that goes to Derek from Shards Online. Those people have helped us a ton with the Kickstarter, and that's amazing. If you people want to help us, and you don't have to spend money on the Kickstarter to do that. Just drop by our forums or wherever, comment on stuff, tell us how we're doing, tell us how to do better. That's going to be super helpful, super amazing for us. And yeah, thanks for having us here today.
All right, sounds good. See you all next time for more TheoryForge. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.